Sorry, I didn't see you there because I was mindful. Mindful, as in the moment. Welcome to the MenTell Health Podcast. I'm Tim, and I invite you to join me on my journey to talk about men's mental health. Before we begin, as always, a brief disclaimer. I am in no shape or form a mental health professional. I'm just a man who's had, quite a lot of experience with his own mental health and now wants other people to open up about theirs by, stripping myself bare in front of you. So join me and let's talk about mental health. As my artistic and brilliantly acted out piece at the beginning of, I think it was like 3 seconds long, well, I've already told you, today I would like to talk a bit about mindfulness, what it is, what it does, and how it can help and how it can't. And at the end of the episode, or well, not the end, but like in the later part of the episode, I will share some techniques, some mindfulness techniques that I've discovered that they help me quite a bit. But before we get to that, let's talk about what is mindfulness. Well, broadly speaking, mindfulness is the concept of being present in the moment, of experiencing the reality and yourself in the present moment without taking anything that happened before it with you or having anything about the worry about what's going to happen in the future occupy you in any shape or form. And this is a technique that has, especially in the CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy realm, also in the self-help realm, in life coaches and stoicism, and lots of other philosophies and therapeutic strategies and methods taken hold and been proven to be helpful, but it's also become a sort of a buzzword where everyone talks about how amazing mindfulness is and what it can achieve. And partly I have to agree with that. Mindfulness is a great thing. If you are mindful, it really helps you to be able to self-regulate. What do I mean by that? Well, people who struggle with mental health issues, for example, depression or anxiety, sometimes find themselves overwhelmed with the emotions they're feeling or with the lack of emotions they're feeling. And this obviously is true for people with other mental health issues or for people who don't necessarily have a mental health issue, but maybe as a child haven't really learned or as an adult to self-regulate their emotions. And when you are overwhelmed by a certain type of feeling or emotion or sensation, that can cascade into something else and become worse and worse and worse and worse if you don't know how to get out of that situation, get out of that moment. And what mindfulness does is allow you to not shut off these emotions and also not to suppress them. That is really, really important. It is not about suppressing anything or shutting something away, putting it away, but it is learning, and then once you've learned, and now get into why I just did quotation marks for the people that were just listening. Once you've learned to be mindful, you can accept the feeling in the moment, but still not let it overwhelm you because you are present that it is an emotion that happens, and that doesn't automatically mean the emotion is either true or representative of the moment of what you are actually experiencing, or even if that is the case, it helps you to be able to, despite the strong feeling, be able to make conscious decisions of how to act and react to those feelings. And I've first was put into contact with mindfulness when I started to have my severe anxiety about death and any bodily symptoms that could lead into, oh, this is something that I haven't experienced before. This means something is wrong with my body, which means I'm probably terminally ill, which means I will die soon, which means what does that even mean, being dead soon? And there's probably no help, and oh, I need to look up what this could mean. Oh my god, there's like 50 different things, but I'm not a doctor. Maybe I should go see a doctor, but then again, if I go to the doctor and they confirm that something's wrong with me, then that will never change. Or if I go to the doctor and they make fun of me because why would you go to the doctor because of this? But then in the end they misdiagnose me because, that's happened before, and then I'll die anyways, but I will never know. Or they could have helped me if they just take me seriously or diagnosed me properly, but they didn't. So that means I'll die. So maybe I shouldn't go to the doctor, but just look it up myself. Or maybe I can do this, this, and this, and then see if it's that, or that, and then know which route I need to take, and so on and so on and so on and so forth. And sometimes all that came before me feeling this way, or going into this spiral of thoughts, was a dizziness or a slight headache or a bit of nausea or a tingling sensation. Or just my heart, me feeling my heart a bit better. Which, retrospectively is all of these things can happen when you're really anxious. And sometimes we don't notice that we're anxious before we notice how anxious we are. If you listen to my CBT episode again, I go into more detail what I mean by that in that one. But either way, mindfulness helped me to learn tools that I could stop this thought pattern from happening before. Because yes, they are all thoughts, but they're actually all just manifested fears in thoughts. So what was actually running the show was my fear. I was very, very, very afraid of something happening and of something going terribly bad. And mindfulness, by the techniques I'll show you later, or I'll talk to you about later, helped me to cut that line short. And before I either went all the way to, or I can go this and this route, or before I think about how the doctors misdiagnose me and I'll die anyways, or how even before this symptom is new, maybe this will mean I'll die, goes any further, I can stop it by being mindful of what is this that I experience, and where is this coming from, and what can I do with it. It helped me a lot. It helped me to be able to regulate myself, and can help other people, of course, too. But what it isn't, and this is important because some people tell you that it is a one fix for everything. It doesn't cure you, because for some things this just isn't a cure. But it also is more a plaster if you don't also work on the underlying issue, because it can quickly become into a technique that does then start suppressing what you're actually feeling. Because the point of mindfulness is to accept an emotion and to be able to look at it without having it overwhelm you, and try to understand where it's coming from and what to do so that the emotion doesn't overwhelm you as quickly or as strongly as it maybe does. Sometimes people use mindfulness as an excuse to say, I don't need to feel this, or I shouldn't feel this, or I can just stop feeling this way, and then I don't need to look further. And it becomes almost an obsession to be so incredibly mindful and to use the techniques to an extent where they are no longer healthy. Because as with everything, well, not everything, but with a lot of things, treating the symptoms may not always be the best case. Sometimes that's all we can do, of course. Some conditions or some situations only allow us to deal with the symptoms as good as possible, so we have a good quality of life, that we can live and have nice experiences and be able to live our everyday life. But that's not true for everything. So it needs to be very carefully evaluated. Is this case, or is it a case where, yes, it's good if we can treat the symptoms, but let's also look at the underlying cause and treat that. And a lot of men who really, really delve themselves into mindfulness and also some of the other philosophies that go along with it, be Buddhism, Stoicism, or other things, they become so entrenched by the idea, as long as I keep doing this, I am good, I'm fine, I can function, and I don't get overwhelmed by the feelings. They come again and again and again, but I can control them. And while that is good, it's also good to know where are these feelings coming from and why do I have them, and what can I do so that they don't start happening in the first place, or have that impact on me that I need to be mindful and regulate myself. And it is very understandable where this has come from, because as I've mentioned in other episodes before, we men need to function. We need to be able to provide, we need to be able to achieve things, because still to this day in a lot of society and many signals that men are being sent by society is you are valuable if you do something, if you achieve something, if you fix something. And in order to do that, there's no space for us to reflect on how we are, why we are that way, and even who we are, and to take a moment and not just do stuff that has an outward impact, but to do stuff that has an inward impact, and to share and to be allowed to just exist, which then leads to many, many other problems. I've talked about that in other episodes. And yes, of course, men, that sucks, that society signals that to us, but it's not an excuse to be like, well, that's what society does, so what can I do? Yes, it does that, but we are also society, so we could start by allowing each other and ourselves to do that and not have society impact us. Because I'm a man, and you, man, watching or listening to this, you are valuable for whatever you do and whoever you are. You don't need to achieve something to be valuable. You don't need to help other people to be valuable. You don't need to become rich, famous, or the best at what you do to be valuable. You are valuable and deserving of love just for who you are. And you don't need to compete against someone else, and you don't need to belittle other people in order for yourself to be worth something. You are, just by being you, worth something. If you ask a newborn baby, does this baby deserve love? Is this baby worthy of existing? Nobody would say no, because it hasn't achieved anything. So why do we have to, in order to have that same? All of a sudden. There's no reason. So allow yourself, and let's allow other people to self-reflect, to look into themselves and understand where this need for mindfulness, which is valuable. I mean, I love that I've learned mindfulness, and I encourage other people to do it too, but it shouldn't be something that stops you from looking into yourself and trying to understand where this behavior and where these feelings come from, so that you can grow and evolve and learn to not have them have that effect and impact on you. Yes, so let's do that. Let's become a society that allows everyone to be full stop. Let's ourselves just allow to be, without needing to prove anything, without needing to achieve anything, without needing to tell other people that their life is wrong, because if they live their life as who they are, that means because they're different to us, we are maybe worth less, which is bullshit. So let's stop doing that, okay? Thank you. And also to life coaches out there, therapists, any other behavioral therapists or people that help other people by using mindfulness. I mean, great job. awesome that you introduce people to these techniques so they're able to regulate themselves and to soothe themselves and to, live, but encourage them to look further and don't just stop there. Don't take the easy option of, oh, now I've taught them mindfulness. That's all they need to do. That's it. It's not. I learned mindfulness and I can be very mindful and not let my emotions overreact. Sometimes they still do because it's not a magic pill. It doesn't, you never completely become a master of mindfulness. It is a evolving process. You'll never be perfect. It will sometimes work, and it may work 99% of the time, but sometimes it doesn't. And knowing that also helps, because if you don't, if you think you're mindful and then all of a sudden it doesn't work anymore, that might have a massive impact on you being like, oh my God, this never works again. I've lost it. Now I will, be doomed because this one thing that helped me, it doesn't help me anymore. So what can I do? So that's something that also needs to be taught. Mindfulness isn't the thing that you learn once and then it fixes you. It's something that you need to train and need to practice, and also accept that it may sometimes not help. And it'd be good in that instances to know why. What's the underlying issue here that may be doing this or stopping me from mindfulness to help? So coaches, therapists, and other people that teach mindfulness, do that. Tell people, yes, this is a good thing that can help you now, but it is not something that you should use as the sole tool. It is a holistic concept. There needs to be more things that go along with it. But now, let's get to the bit you've probably, the only reason you've clicked on this video and maybe skipped already to this bit, or were anxiously waiting for me to start with some techniques, some mindfulness techniques. And, all of them are probably also available elsewhere, and probably other people may explain them better than me, or differ in the execution of these techniques. But regardless, you take from it what you think works for you, and if it doesn't work for you, then even, contact me or look around. There's a plethora of techniques that help you be mindful. Because the core principle of mindfulness is to take the attention away from the overwhelming feelings or thought patterns, and to focus on something external that is not that. And one of the techniques that, especially as a beginner, I've found very, very helpful is the so-called counting and breathing technique. So you sit in a comfortable position, or you can even lie. I found sitting more comfortable because it helped me not to, accidentally fall asleep. But lying is also perfectly fine. You don't have to meditate, because this is a part of meditation. Sitting in a crossed leg with your hands on your knees in like little circles. You just sit as comfortable as you can. It can help having the hands facing upwards, because it just opens your body up, opens your shoulders up, makes you easier to breathe, which is important. But whichever position is comfortable for you, that's the way you sit, okay? And then you can close your eyes. I found that more helpful to be able to concentrate better. But if you are too anxious to close your eyes because you're afraid that something might come at you, then don't close your eyes. You don't have to. And anyone who tells you should just shut up, because you don't have to. It helps, but you don't have to. Yes, and then you breathe in, hold, and breathe out. And whilst you do that, in order for that breathing to have a good rhythm that helps you, you count the breath. You count 1, 2, 3, 4, for example, in. So 1, 2, 3, 4 in. And then before you start counting again, when you breathe out, you hold for a moment, second, and then you breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4, possibly 5. If you don't want to count out longer than in, that's fine, but it should be the goal that at some point the period of breathing out is just a tiny bit longer than the period of breathing in. And it's also very important that you don't stick to the 4 or 5. If you have maybe not a very high lung capacity or a very high lung capacity, and those numbers might not work for you perfectly. You just look into yourself, especially when you're not in an anxious situation, but when you're calm, and see what's the best for you to breathe. How long do you need to breathe in to feel I've breathed in enough? And how long do you need to breathe out to be like, oh yes, this is a bit longer than I've breathed in? And then those are your numbers that you use to count. Now, why is it important that the breathing in is shorter than the breathing out? That is simply something to do that when we breathe in, our nervous system prepares to run and to flee, so we're more alert. And when we breathe out longer, our body gets the signal, oh, we can calm down. This is not dangerous. So the period of calmness is longer than the period of anxiety, and that helps us to focus. Now, of course, you could also not do that with counting. However, counting helps you to stay in that present. It helps the thoughts to be focused on something else than the feeling or the thought pattern that's developing because of the feelings. So I encourage you a lot, or actually it's the best way this works, is to count the breaths until you feel you are able to be present in where you are and the feelings no longer overwhelm you and you can look at them without being overwhelmed. So that's the breathing method that I call 4-5, because I breathe in 4 times and breathe out 4-5 times, or when I'm highly anxious I try to do the 5-7, whichever. The numbers are your number, you can call it what you want. A technique that is related to this and works very similar to this is you get into the same comfortable position that you were in before, and you breathe the same as you did before, and you count the breath. And after a moment, you decide how long. When you feel you are ready, instead of counting your breath, you look at the thoughts that came to you, thoughts that are very, very overwhelming you, or that you feel give you anxiety or make you doubt yourself or make you sad, or whichever they are that have a strong impact on you in that moment, or before or after. And I found it very helpful to just picture the thought as a block that I could take into my hands and look at. And there's no like, oh my God, why am I thinking this? Or there's no, oh, I really shouldn't be thinking this. But there's just this thought. I look at it and okay, this is what it is. There's no judgment in any way. It's not about taking the thought and judging it. It is about taking the thought, looking at it, and then accepting. Okay, this is the thought I have. Good. And then to put it aside. Not to repress it, but to accept it. This is a thought. That's all it is. It is a thought or a feeling. And that's all it is. By itself, it does nothing to you. And you put it aside. And then you look at the next one. And the next one. Until you've looked at them, until you are able to accept it. This is the thought, and this is the feeling. And that's it. You don't have to look into why am I feeling this, or look into what does it mean, or why do I behave this way when I feel this. You look at it, examine it for this is the thought, this is the feeling, and then you put it aside and you breathe. And that's all it is. That's all you need to do. And then you breathe. These techniques work the best. All of the ones that I've just talked about, and the ones that I'm going to talk about now, I have 3 more. They work the best if you practice them not only in the moment when you are highly anxious, sad, or whichever feeling that's overwhelming you or underwhelming you, with thoughts racing through your mind, but also when you don't have that, when you are just calm. So I found it helps me to just every morning, I know just is a bad word, because some of us are so overwhelmed with our feelings that we don't have these moments, or we have such busy days that we find it very difficult to carve out like 5 minutes. I just found that for me myself. You find the time that you have and the opportunity that you have. If it's once a day, perfect. If it's once every 2-3 days, good. If it's once a week, great. If it's once a month, it's still better than not doing it at all. You see, it's not about you need to fulfill this quota, otherwise you suck. It's about making it possible to work for you. Because the more you practice them when you're not in a highly anxious or overwhelmed phase or underwhelmed, the better they work in those moments, because your body is used to it and it knows, oh yeah, here we go. And also, which, doesn't ring true for everyone, but for quite a few people, it also helps to not feel overwhelmed as often, because it just happens less and less the more we practice these things. But again, that's not true for everyone, and especially for people where there's a lot of underlying issues that are not looked into. And I emphasize this again and again because I see so many people talk about mindfulness as this solution for everything, and then people walk away and then they try it and it doesn't immediately work for them, or it doesn't work long term for them because some things are just too severe for mindfulness alone to fix or to help with it. And then they get frustrated and they blame themselves that they are not doing it enough and they're not good enough at it. And that's just not true. I mean, obviously, if you never practice it, then it will not have as much effect on you and won't help you as much. But that still is not necessarily your fault if you're trying your hardest. And even if you're not trying your hardest because you can't, then that's also not your fault. Just do the best you can in the situation you are in. Another technique that I found helps, especially in a situation where I am highly anxious. I use it every time I go to the dentist, because no matter how much therapy I had, no matter how often I go, no matter how hard I try, the dentist still, every time, my anxiety level is right up there. I've managed to be good enough, in quotation marks, that the night before my anxiety doesn't peak already. It just starts in the morning before I have to go, so that's great. And I go in August again, so I'll let you know how I feel about that. Anyway, so something that I found, and I think I've talked about it in the CBT episode before, but I'll talk about it again because, repetition makes the world work. It's the so-called 5-4-3-1 method, where you first, and you can do this aloud if you feel comfortable doing it aloud, or you can do it in your, talking to yourself in your mind, is with sitting as comfortably as you can and just describing 5 things you see in the room. So for example, I would see the camera, the microphone, the light, my computer, the other light, I think that was 5 already, and then you describe 5 things you hear. There's not much I can hear in this room right now because it's quite made to be as quiet as possible, so the sound works, so this is not the perfect room for it. And then 5 things you feel, and that is not that you feel like I feel happy, sad, curious. It is feel physically. So I feel my feet in my shoes, I feel the shirt tickling my neck, I can feel the watch on my arm, I can feel the trousers on my legs, I can feel my calves cramping up from standing all the time. So these are 5 things, I think. It's difficult to count while explaining. And once you've done that, you go and you start again with what you see, and this time it's 4 things. And it can be the same things that you already did with the 5. It can be different things, both work. And so you say 4 things you see, then you say 4 things you hear, then you say 4 things you feel, then you say 3 things you see, 3 things you hear, 3 things you feel, 2 things, and 1. And then you can check in. Do I feel calmer? Has this helped? Because the point of this is to take the attention away from the anxiety you feel inside to something external, so that your body can calm down. And you can then focus on breathing. And I found that this helps, especially when the breathing method doesn't calm me down enough. So that's one. And then if it didn't, you do it again. You do it again. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. With all the seeing, hearing, and feeling. As often as you need, as often as you feel will help you. Or you can switch it up. You can do this first, and then you do the breathing. And then, all of these things together may help. Another technique that I use when I feel overly anxious, and I especially helps if I have someone else with me, is I describe something as if they can't see it. So I try to describe it to them in a way as if they can't see it or they don't know what it is. So if I see a tree, I try to explain to them how that tree looks. And either they have never seen a tree, so I need to be like, oh, what could they refer to that they would know what that tree looks like? Do you know what a fork is? A wooden spoon? No, yeah, so it's that wooden spoon, but much, much bigger. And it has these wrinkles outside that you can feel if you put your hand over it, like almost scratchy a bit, and it's tall as a building, and all these smaller branches that are like other smaller wooden things like the spoon, but more round and longer, that come off it, and on those longer ones, other ones that are even smaller and maybe not as long, but they come out on the sides again. And then there's like leaves which are green and almost like sheets of paper, thin and light. And the green is, yeah, and then go on and go on. I describe to them, which again, the point of that is to take away the attention from you and to be in the moment, to be present in where you are at that time. And the last technique that also helps, if there's someone with you, I found for me helps, is to have them write words on your arm with their finger or on your back. And then you need to guess the word, or paint something on your back like a sun and you need to guess what it is, because then it puts the attention on something external on your body that you can feel, which is again the same as the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Also you need to feel something on your body and your surroundings, and your brain is occupied with trying to figure out what the hell's going on. Yes, and the last 3 methods are just good to know. These ones you can practice, but they're more like for when you're highly anxious. And some people might tell you these are CBT methods and not mindfulness methods, but for me that's basically the same, because they all have the same goal, to help you with being present in the moment. And some of them help more when you're highly anxious, and other ones help more to prepare, which, for example, the breathing methods, be it just the counting or the looking at what you're feeling and thinking at the time, to be present in the moment and where you are. And yeah, this is it. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to post them in the comments or message me Instagram, mental health _ podcast, website men-tell-health.com. You can email me Tim at men-tell-health.com. I would love to hear from you. I love it when you share your stories. Obviously you're always welcome to talk with me on the podcast. If you like this, please give it a share and a rating. If you're on YouTube, subscribe and click the bell. If you are on Apple Podcasts, please give it a rating or a review. That always helps. And yeah, thank you very much for listening and watching. As always, please remember, I see and I hear you, and I hope you hear and or see me again next week.